Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly wild piece of financial history. We're going to unpack exactly how a former cement trader managed to exploit massive systemic loopholes and in doing so orchestrated the most devastating financial shock in Indian history. We'll be breaking down the mechanics of the crime, the rise of the man behind it, and the seriously flawed system that let it all happen. Right off the bat, let's talk about a totally staggering number, a 4,000 crore rupee deficit. Just let that sink in for a second. This single deficit completely shook the entire nation, and what's honestly mind-blowing is that it was engineered by just one jobber named Harshad Mehta. So how exactly does one individual create a financial crater of that magnitude? Let's find out.
Section 1. The Making of a Bull.
Now, his journey definitely wasn't some overnight success story. Back in 1973, a frustrated 18-year-old Harshad, dealing with his father's failing health and business, moved his family from Raipur to Mumbai in a really desperate bid to change their fortunes. He started out doing manual labor, trading plastic scrap, literally carrying bags of cement himself just to save a few bucks. By 1977, he was a clerk at New India Assurance, making a meager 600 rupees a month. But he hustled hard. By 1980, he managed to secure a badge in the Bombay Stock Exchange as a jobber, which is someone who buys and sells shares on behalf of clients right there in the trading ring. So, how did he get his early edge? Well, Harshad quickly realized that to win, he needed information before anybody else had it. He actually built connections with labor union leaders to get his hands on daily factory production data. If production was up, he bought. If there was a looming strike, he sold. Today, we'd immediately call that insider trading, but amazingly, this practice was completely legal in India back then. He took that insider intel and paired it with a classic pump and dump strategy. He and his colleagues would find a low-volume stock, buy it up incredibly heavily to artificially skyrocket the price, and then just sell off chunks of their holdings for massive personal profit. This made him a fortune pretty fast. But, the market is ruthless. A sudden crash in March 1982, infamously known as Black Thursday, nearly wiped him out entirely, leaving him drowning in 10 lakh rupees of debt. Section 2. Strategies of the Big Bull. Totally unfazed by the fact that he literally had to mortgage his wife's jewelry just to cover those massive debts, Harshad bounced back. He and his brother Ashwin founded a portfolio management firm called Grow More Consultants, initially scraping together funds from family and friends. And the guy genuinely had a sharp eye for value. For example, he noticed that raw tea leaves were seeing a 3 to 4 rupee per kilogram price increase in the broader market. He immediately realized that companies selling that tea were going to see a huge bump in profit, yet their shares were totally undervalued, so he bought heavily into companies like Tata Tea and McLeod Russell. Within a year, those share prices just exploded, generating massive returns and earning him this reputation as a legit market magician. Section 3. Battling the bear cartel. But success breeds enemies, right? Harshad's meteoric rise, plus the literal lines of eager investors wrapped around his office building, quickly drew the attention and the anger of the established market legends. We're talking about a classic financial showdown here. Harshad Mehta, the bull, aggressively buying to drive prices up, going head-to-head against Manu Manek, the powerful leader of the bear cartel, who actively wanted to crash the market so he could profit. Now, how do the bears actually fight back? Through short selling. In 1986, a budget announcement caused the market to dip, and Manu Manek pounced. He aggressively short-sold shares of a company called SPIC, which Harshad had heavily invested in. By driving the price down further and further, the bears started spreading these vicious rumors that Harshad was down over 1 crore and was on the verge of total bankruptcy. Harshad had just 14 days to clear his stock market dues and basically save his entire reputation. He countered this attack with an absolute boss move. He absorbed a 1.5 crore loss, just so he could clear all his payments 2 full weeks early. He made absolutely sure the news of this advance spread everywhere, from the street-side tea stalls straight up to the trading ring. It was a legendary flex that totally stunned the bears and cemented his dominance. Section 4. The money market loophole. That brutal battle taught Harshad a really critical lesson, though. To permanently beat the bears and become an untouchable powerhouse, he needed capital, hundreds of crores of it, and the money market was the perfect vehicle. This was basically an arrangement for short-term interbank loans. Say Citibank has an extra 100 crores lying around, they lend it to Bank of America for 15 days and get collateral like government bonds in return.
Brokers facilitated these specific transactions, known as ready-forward deals, for a small fee.
But here's the catch. Moving massive physical assets and government bonds around every 15 days is a total logistical nightmare. So instead, the banks just used a piece of paper called a bank receipt, or a BR. It was essentially an official IOU, a promise of collateral rather than the physical collateral itself. Harshad managed to break into this exclusive broker cartel, and he spotted a fatal flaw in the system. The banks would transfer the loan money to his broker account in advance. He realized he could take that cash, intentionally delay finalizing the interbank deal for 10 to 15 days, and pump all that bank money directly into his own stocks for massive personal profit. When the clock finally ran out and he had to close the deal, he just bribed smaller institutions, like the Bank of Crod, to print completely fake BRs that the lending banks almost never bothered to verify. The result? Absolute, explosive market growth. This massive, continuous influx of diverted bank money fueled an incredible 460% jump in the Sensex. Between May 1990 and April 1992, the index shot from 800 up to 4,500 points. His favorite stocks, like ACC, surged from 300 to over 1,000 rupees. Apollo Tires went up tenfold. No matter how hard the bear cartel tried to short the market, Harshad literally had an infinite treasure chest of bank funds to keep the prices soaring. Completely empowered by this infinite money glitch, he officially earned the title of the Big Bull. And his lifestyle? Unimaginable. We're talking a 15,000 square foot penthouse, a fleet of 29 luxury cars, including India's very first imported Lexus. He was gracing the covers of premier business magazines and was celebrated as India's highest income taxpayer. Retail investors absolutely worshipped his every move. If Harshad touched a stock, it turned to gold.
Section 5. The House of Cards falls.
Drunk on his own success, Harshad started aiming to out-earn global institutions. But reality always catches up. By 1991, the Reserve Bank of India had grown highly suspicious of how these bank receipts were actually being used, and they started launching quiet inquiries. The downfall was rapid. In December 1991, Harshad took a massive 500 crore loan from the State Bank of India and pumped it into the market. But with the RBI cracking down, he suddenly couldn't procure the fake BRs to cover his tracks. He desperately bribed an SBI employee to manipulate the records, but by April 1992, SBI officials found the missing 500 crores. He tried to pay it back in panic-driven installments, but it was too late. On April 23, 1992, journalist Sucheta Dalal blew the whistle, exposing the massive gap right on the front page of the Times of India. That single revelation triggered absolute market panic. The resulting sell-off was completely catastrophic. Government investigations unspooled this massive, tangled web. The market completely crashed, financially ruining everyday retail investors who had followed his tips blindly. And those smaller, complicit banks that helped forge the documents, they entirely sank. When the dust settled, the final tally of missing money was over 4,000 crores.
Section 6. A controversial legacy.
Harshad and his brother Ashwin were arrested in June 1992. Their massive assets were seized, and Harshad spent years in and out of the court system until he ultimately died in police custody in December 2001 at just 47 years old. Even today, his legacy is deeply polarized. On one hand, many view him as a malicious scamster who brazenly manipulated the system, stole billions in bank funds, and completely ruined innocent retail investors. On the other hand, his family and his supporters argue he was a scapegoat, unfairly targeted and punished for utilizing common pre-existing money market loopholes that the entire banking cartel was already quietly exploiting long before he came along. And that leaves us with a really provocative question to ponder. Was Harshad Mehta the definitive villain of India's financial system, a mastermind of historic theft? Or was he merely a symptom of a financial structure that was already rotten to its core? It really makes you rethink the systems operating around us every day. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the rules of the game.